Hey y'all, welcome back to our very bookish channel. My name's Amanda and my friend Jen and I have a wonderful video for you today. We are going to be talking about our most anticipated releases of January and February of 2025.
Hey guys, welcome to Most Anticipated for January and February of 2025.
Hey y'all, Editing Amanda here. Did you miss me? I know you did. Don't worry. I will be on again later in the video. I just wanted to pop on real quick and say, if you are at this point in the video, please make friends with the like button. Obviously, there's something that you liked, either the thumbnail or the title or the books maybe that you saw where you were interested in reading. And I would appreciate it if you would just click that like button and help support our channel.
It seems crazy to say that. We have been doing Most Anticipated for a while now. Amanda and I really like to do these videos and take a look at what's coming up ahead. We especially like to do it because we often get arcs and we love seeing some of the books that are coming out that we get a chance to read early, and it's just a lot of fun. I love new books. I try and sprinkle as much as I can of current existing books into my mix, but I do tend to gravitate towards arcs and reading some of the new books coming out, especially from our favorite authors. The last one that we did for 2024, where we were talking about November and December 2024, was a little disappointing. There weren't a lot of books out that I wanted to personally read. So I ended up doing kind of a preview of January of 2025. I knew there was going to be a lot coming out, and I'm back to having 25 titles to talk about today. And I feel like that's a lot. I tried my best to curb and whittle down some of the list, and I didn't want to whittle any more down from 25. There are a couple that I was not 100% sure that I was going to be reading, but I still have the desire to read it at some point. So I left it on the list. As you can see, I have a small pile of physical arcs, and I do have a fair amount of electronic arcs that I will be talking about today. So a lot of these I will be reading, I think, at some point, at least I hope to, because I own them in some shape or form. The first one I am going to talk about is one of the physical arcs that I got, and this comes out January 7th. This is an author I've been wanting to read and so far have not had a chance to read any of her books. I am constantly drawn to a book that she has coming out, but for whatever reason, other books are always shoving other books out of the way to get my attention and I want to read. So I have not tried her yet. So this one's called A Sea of Unspoken Things by Adrienne Young. She tends to do kind of like a speculative fiction. There's always a dash of fantastical in her books. This one is about, it doesn't feel so much so in this one, it seems more fiction, but this one is about a woman who investigates her twin brother's mysterious death. That's all I really know about it. I say this often in our vlogs, but there are times I like to read more and more about what a book's about, and there are times where I only need a snippet, and there are some authors that I like to go completely blind into those books. So that's all I know about this one. I do want to try her. I do have the physical arc, so that's one step closer to me actually reading this author. I plan on doing it, so hopefully it'll happen in January.
So starting off my list on January 7th, I have a book that I have read, loved, and reviewed, and that's called A Language of Dragons by S.F. Williamson. This is a young adult romantasy. You're following a young adult named Viv, and in the very beginning of the book, her whole family is taken from her, and her world is turned upside down, and she does some desperate things, and she releases a dragon that has been held captive within a deal. She makes a deal with the dragon and releases it. And from there, the story just goes a little crazy. If you want to know more about this book, check out my ARC review because I explain some more details in my ARC review and express some more of my feelings for this book. It is a duology, so I'm really highly anticipating the next book coming out after this one. And I think if you like books like Divine Rivals, this felt very Divine Rival like to me. I think you will really enjoy this book and you need to check it out on January 7th.
The next title reminds me that Amanda and I have declared January as being Dragon January. We do plan on reading more science fiction fantasy having to do with dragons. The one I'm about to go over, Amanda has already read. And of course, at some point when I get to the date, we will be talking about Onyx Storm, the newest from Rebecca Yarros. This one is called Language of Dragons by S.F. Williamson. Amanda did send me the ARC to hand off to someone I work with. Allie is going to be reading it. She hasn't started it yet. I asked her recently and she hasn't started it yet. But Amanda loved it. She was praising it. I think it's one of those that are completely up her alley. And I haven't gotten into the mood yet. We're not in January yet, but I haven't gotten into the mood yet for fantasy. I have a feeling I will right as we get into January, just in time. But this one is kind of a historical element because it takes place in London, 1923. Dragons are soaring through the skies, and the main character, Viv, has to free a dragon, and she ends up starting a war, was what the description said. But Amanda will talk about it a little more, and she did do an ARC review, which you guys can also check out. But I have a feeling I will be reading this in January. The next one, I believe, was one of the ones I did a preview when we were doing November and December most anticipated. It's called The Perfect Home by Daniel Knitz, and this one seemed very interesting, not anything I've really read before. And it's a fixer-upper meets Gone Girl, suspenseful and witty domestic thriller set in the world of home renovation TV, featuring a woman who becomes public enemy number one after a horrifying discovery prompts her to free her celebrity husband with their twin babies. I have at one time been obsessed with watching HGTV and a lot of the shows that were on there. So that's why it was a little interesting for me to pick this up. But of course, I got the ARC. I believe I got this through Shelf Awareness. And I am looking forward to starting this. And I plan on doing that in January. The next one is also January 7th. It's All the Water in the World by Erin Kafal. It's a literary thriller compared to Station 11. Station 11 is one of the books that I really like. I really like that author. Her name is Emily St. John Mandel. She also wrote, and I'm forgetting the other one that I really loved by her, but I can put it on the screen. So that caught my interest for this one. So I asked for the ARC and got the ARC. It is a flooded future where the protagonists in this book are living on the roof in New York, on the roof of the Museum of Natural History. So it's definitely in the vein. I can see it being Station 11 was very futuristic, apocalyptic, and it was made into an HBO series too. I really enjoyed the book better though. And in that one, it was more about a disease. This being a flooded future probably has something to do with more of an environmental horror type future, I would think. I plan on checking this one out too, January 7th.
Releasing on January 14th is another ARC that Jen and I both received and have read, and that's called The Business Trip by Jessie Garcia. This is a psychological thriller following two women that get on a plane and some mysterious things happen. Jen has done a full ARC review on this book. I will link it below if you want more of a description. I do think she liked the book a little more than me. I thought the book was pretty good. I don't think it compares to Frida.
On January 14th, another shout out to a book that I have read, and Amanda did read it too. I did an ARC review, which she can also pin in the comments below. It's called The Business Trip by Jessie Garcia. I very much enjoyed this one. I thought it had some really good twists in it. I don't think Amanda wasn't as impressed as I was by this book, but I genuinely started to think Frida McFadden had a pseudonym and she was trying to write under another author's name because it just felt very similar in style. And some of the plot twists were just in that vein that she likes to write. but I don't think it's really her. But check out the video that I did on it to see more thoughts on that one. It comes out January 14th.
Just FYI, I have a ton of books coming out on January 14th. I'm anticipating. So January 14th is going to be going on for a minute. But the next book coming out January 14th is called The Way Up is Death by Dan Hanks. This book caught my eye because it's sci-fi, and I am starting to dabble in a little bit of sci-fi. It says it's a sci-fi mystery, so that was intriguing to me. It also sounds kind of dark and scary, so I wanted to just read you a quick description of the book. When a mysterious tower appears in the skies above England, 13 strangers are pulled from their lives to stand before it as the countdown begins. Above the doorway is one word: ascend. And so begins the race to the top through sinking ships, haunted houses, and other waking nightmares, as the group fights to hold on to its humanity while the twisted horror of why they're here grows ever more apparent and death stalks their every move. So really exciting for that one. It sounds interesting. I'm going to check it out.
The next one is by a popular horror author, Grady Hendrix. I don't have the physical arc for this one. I do have an electronic arc for this one. And this one is called Witchcraft for Wayward Girls by Grady Hendrix. Comes out January 14th. It's set in Florida, 1970, and it follows a group of young women in a home for unwed mothers, and they find a guide to witchcraft. I don't really know too much beyond that. The other one that I had read by him was the Final Girl Support Group. And he tends to have a lot of dark humor in his books as well, which I can appreciate. He has a bunch of other books that are popular, and I haven't read anything else by him yet. I wasn't a huge fan of the Final Girl Support Group. I felt like it was, I don't know, some of the humor kind of fell flat on me. But this one looked really interesting, so I decided to give him another chance.
So the next book on my list is The Witchcraft for Wayward Girls by Grady Hendrix. And I actually was approved for an arc of this book on NetGalley, so I am so excited to get into reading this. This is a horror book, and you're following a group of very young girls who are pregnant, and they are sent away to this commune, I guess you could call it, prison maybe, I don't know. It seems like, based on the description, they're kind of there against their will, and they're sent there to have their babies and then return back to the world. You don't really know what's going on with the people that are running it, with what happens to the babies. You don't know anything about that, but they're sent there to have these babies, and then they're supposed to move on with their lives afterwards, I believe. But while they're there, one of the young girls is given this book of witchcraft, and she learns how to kind of take control of her life using the witchcraft. So this sounded like a very interesting book. It does sound a little bit disturbing. It is a horror book, so you have to expect some kind of disturbing themes in there, but I am kind of really interested in reading this. I have not read Grady Hendrix yet, but I know that he's the author of very popular horror books, and he is very highly touted in the book community, so I am very, very anxious to start reading this. This might be the next book I read after I finish the vlog I'm currently reading for right now. We are doing mood reading this month, so I kind of have the freedom to pick and choose what books I want to read. So I think after I finish the vlog I'm currently working on, I might jump right into this book. So if I can get it done before this book comes out, then I might have an arc review out for you guys on this one soon.
The next one I don't have any kind of arc for, and it's called Cross My Heart by Megan Collins. It comes out January 14th. And it just had a very interesting premise. And it's about a heart transplant patient becoming obsessed with the husband of her donor. And she begins to correspond with him. I think she does this, though, he doesn't know who she is. So she's pretending to be someone else through a chat online. And she begins to suspect, though, that he killed his wife, who she now has the heart of. And does she realize this too late? And will she now be in danger? It sounded very, very interesting. I very much want to read this. So I think I'm going to have to wait until I actually can physically buy this. I don't think I'm going to get the arc for it. But that one, January 14th, I have a feeling I'm going to end up reading it at some point in 2025.
The next book I'm anticipating coming out January 14th is The Really Dead Wives of New Jersey. This book is based off of the reality TV series The Real Housewives of New Jersey or New York or Los Angeles or Georgia. I don't know all of them. But anyways, there's a very popular reality TV series called The Real Housewives of, and then you pick a city. And so this book seems to be based loosely on that. You're following a main character who marries into this family, and she goes on this reality TV show with other housewives, and I think there's a murder. I think there's lots of juicy secrets that get revealed about these housewives. I'm expecting, just like the TV show, a lot of like cattiness and bickering and fighting amongst these ladies, and I just feel like this could be a very entertaining book, and I'm gonna give it a try. I'm not sure if I said the author's name. The author is Astrid Dahl.
The next one I just want to give a shout out because we already read this. Amanda and I read it in a vlog a few months ago. She could tag the video in the comments of this video, but it's Alice Feeney, who is one of my favorite authors. Still, my favorite from her is Daisy Darker, and I know Amanda's gonna laugh when I say that. She does need to read Daisy Darker. But this one I felt was also really good, and I still would recommend picking it up. It's called Beautiful Ugly. It comes out January 14th. And it's about an author who heads to a remote island a year after his wife has seemingly disappeared. And it was off of like a cliffside, so no one knows if she actually survived it. But he starts to see her everywhere on this remote island, and he goes a little crazy thinking, is she really here on this remote island? And it has some definite twists to it. There are a lot of interesting points about this book. That's all I want to say, because I would be ruining it if I tried to say anything else. But Alice Feeney, if you love suspense, you love things that are kind of twisty, you love thrillers, I would say she's a great author to check out. I would highly suggest it, especially Daisy Darker.
Hey y'all, Editing Amanda here again. I'm back. I forgot to talk about a book that's coming out January 14th as well. I think because I have so many for January 14th, this one just kind of fell in the cracks. Also, I have the ARC and I'm reading it, so sometimes when I'm currently reading a book, I forget that it's not released yet. So I'm not very far along in the book. I'm only about 15% in, but wow, this book is really good. It's called Lightfall by Ed Crocker. This is his fantasy debut novel. It is going to be a trilogy. This is book one of the trilogy, and it has so many fantasy aspects I like. The blurb about it says, a novel of vampires, werewolves, and sorcerers. Lightfall is a stunning debut epic fantasy by Ed Crocker for fans of J. Kristoff's Empire of the Vampire and Richard Swan's Justice of Kings. And y'all know, if you have followed this channel any amount of time, I love Empire of the Vampire and Empire of the Damned and J. Kristoff's writing. So that really just, when I saw that, I had to request the ARC immediately. And I have to say that so far it is not disappointing. There are werewolves, there are vampires, there are sorcerers. At this point in the book, I've only really read a lot about the vampires and sorcerers, but it has been phenomenal. And that's all I gotta say about this book. If you like fantasy, specifically grimdark fantasy, or if you're a fan of J. Kristoff's, then I really think you need to put this book on your radar.
The next one I am currently reading, it's an electronic e-arc. It also comes out January 14th. It's a popular date. There's a lot of books coming out January 14th. And it's called Last Room on the Left by Leah Conan. And it's about a woman who, her name is Carrie, and her life is in shambles. Her husband has left her. She has a drinking problem. She's also an author, and she has a looming deadline, or she has to give back the money that she accepted for this big book that she's supposed to be writing. And she decides to barricade herself in this motel, but it's also her taking on a job at this motel. And she looks out the window one night. In the snow, she sees a body. And she starts to find out that she has to quickly keep ahead of a killer that she needs to identify what's going on. Or is it really happening? And it's one of those books that I don't know if I'm going to end up really liking, because it's something I've complained about in some other videos, but the unreliable narrator, she has a drinking problem. She's very depressed. Reality is skewed for her. So is it all going to end up being in her mind, or something that you don't even know? It's something that's not real. So I don't know. I'm in the middle of it, and I will most likely do an ARC review for it. I try not to do ARC reviews when I hate a book because I don't want to trash it online. If you don't see me, you probably will figure out that I might not have liked it or did not finish it, but it comes out January 14th. Stay tuned to find out if it's good or not. Next one, of course, is January 14th as well. It's called Clever Little Thing by Helena Eklund. And it's a powerful psychological thriller following a mother who must confront a sudden and terrifying change in her daughter after the abrupt death of their babysitter. And it sounds like the mother starts to suspect that her daughter might be a killer. It didn't mention how old her daughter is, so I'm not sure about that. I felt like that was a very interesting premise. I haven't read anything like it that I can remember, so I was going to check it out. I don't have an ARC at this time. There's a chance I might get the electronic ARC, but that one, January 14th. The next one is, of course, January 14th again. There's a lot on January 14th. I did warn you. This one's called The Ends of Things by Sandra Kwiatkowska. For fans of Rachel Hawkins is how it was advertised. And that caught my interest because I read Rachel Hawkins for the first time this past year, and I really did enjoy the book that I read. This one is about Laura Phillips always wanted to travel, and her now boyfriend suggests a vacation in paradise, and she's elated. Then on vacation, she meets a stranger, Diana. Laura finds herself telling Diana all kinds of secrets, all about her life. And then Diana disappears. Laura gets caught up in the investigation and she tries to find answers and maintain her own innocence, and she starts to get implicated in this disappearance. A dream getaway turns into a nightmare. It sounded interesting, sounded very much like thrillers and suspense that I love to read, so that went on my list, absolutely.
Finally, January 21st. Y'all better know, Onyx Storm is coming out, and I am so excited. This is the third book of the Empyrean series by Rebecca Yarros. If y'all haven't heard of Fourth Wing or Iron Flame, I don't know what to tell you. We've done full reading vlogs on both of those books. I love this series. I like it a little bit more than Jen. I think I'm a little more into it than Jen is, but we both really enjoy the book. And Fourth Wing is one of those books that just started my like fantasy romantasy era. It really did. We read that book back in April or May of 2023 when it first came out, before it even got super popular. So that book has just stuck with me. It's a book I think about all the time, and I love all the first print editions that come out. So I'm really looking forward to Onyx Storm, and I have to say, so far from what I've seen of the cover and the sprayed edges, this is my favorite cover and favorite styled book. I just think this book is gorgeous, and I cannot wait to get my hands on it in January.
All right, we are up to January 21st. I have a feeling Amanda might go first on this one, but Onyx Storm comes out. I have a feeling Amanda is probably about 100 times more excited than I am about this. She is obsessed with this world, and I did really like Fourth Wing. I fell in love with that book. I absolutely loved it. I was right there with Amanda, but something about Iron Flame, it just, a huge chunk of the middle, I felt like I was pushing myself through, and I hate that feeling in a book. I just wasn't as engaged. I don't know if it was just me, but when I ended up talking to a couple other people that were reading it at work, there was some similar sentiment about how a lot of fans are feeling like that middle part was slower. I'm hoping that Onyx Storm brings back that same feeling I had with Fourth Wing. One of the detriments for me going into Onyx Storm, though, is I am not going to be rereading Fourth Wing and Iron Flame. I'm going to be basing it on the memory, so hopefully that doesn't mar my reading it either, but we will continue to see Violet and Xaden and their world with the dragons. I love, one of the best parts about the books are the dragons, and Andarna, who is the golden dragon for Violet because she has 2 dragons. Those parts are definitely ones that I enjoy a lot. So I am looking forward to picking up. I wasn't so put off that I am not going to be going into this third one. Hopefully it'll be good. Hopefully it'll meet the expectation. The amount of fans and so much focus on this series now. I feel Rebecca is definitely going to be feeling the stress of trying to meet expectations, but hopefully it'll be as good as Fourth Wing, and I am looking forward to that being the case. All right, we're still in January. This one is called Our Winter Monster by Dennis Mahoney, but this one's on January 28th, so I didn't have another one on January 21st. Our Winter Monster is more horror, it sounds like, and it's about an unhappy couple running away from their problems and racing away from a blizzard, trying to get to a ski village, and in hopes of saving their relationship. They're constantly fighting, and then there are reports of a creature rampaging through the town they escaped to, and it seems to be after them. Their names are Holly and Brian, and they start to see the past, present, and themselves in a monstrous new light. Sounded really interesting. Nothing I necessarily have read like that. There was one book that it kind of reminded me of, and it was called Edenville, and it was about a couple who they end up going to this town because the guy was offered a teaching job, and this town ends up being not haunted, but there's nefarious things going on, and they were inviting him to this college with malintent, and then they end up fighting. The couple ends up fighting. So it kind of, and I really enjoyed that book. There was a lot of humor in that book, and it kind of reminded me of that. So I think that's why I was drawn to this one. And I plan on reading it, but it comes out on January 28th. I don't have an arc or anything for that one.
So on January 28th, very quickly, we have The Crash by Frida McFadden that is being released. Jen and I always like to do Frida McFadden reading vlogs when she releases new books. We both have already read The Crash and done a reading vlog on it. I will link it in the description below, of course. But check out our Frida McFadden Part 7 reading vlog if you want to know more about this book. Frida is one of those authors that I feel like is evolving and can constantly evolve to stay relevant and fresh. And this book is unlike any other book, in my opinion, that she has written. And she just keeps evolving and kind of hitting a stride and finding new things to write about, new ways to keep readers interested and keep the twist coming. So put this book on your calendar for January 28th.
Another shout out, and I guess we have read a fair amount of books in 2025, and I do realize I have a lot of arcs that go all the way to the end of summer of 2025. They really release some of these books as arcs early. It's just crazy how early you can get some of these books. So on January 28th, our favorite, Frida McFadden, is coming out with another book, but we have already read it. It's called The Crash. Amanda can link the video in the comments. We're huge fans. If you know our channel, you know that we have released several Frida vlogs. We've read a lot of her books. We have, I want to say, 5 or 6 more of her previous titles we haven't read yet. I don't know when we plan on doing another one because there isn't a book announced as of right now that we haven't read that's new. I'm hoping she announces one soon, and I also hope that we get a arc of it because it's really hard to wait for her books. I love reading her very much. She's highly readable in my opinion. I end up finishing her books very quickly. This one, The Crash, we definitely both love. I would suggest picking it up, putting it on your January TBR. Click the link to see some of our thoughts, but if you want to wait till it comes out January 28th.
The last and final book of January that I have coming out January 28th is At Dark, I Become Loathsome by Eric LaRocca. I have not read this author before. It is a horror novel. I mean, obviously by the cover, I think it's pretty horrifying. You can tell it's a horror novel. It sounds by the description you're following a man named Ashley whose wife has died and his young son has disappeared, and he is just struggling with the will to live, and he meets a jinx, it says. So I believe that's like some kind of demon or evil creature, and his life kind of spirals from there. I think this is a horror tale of him realizing what happened and dealing with his grief and trying to find a way to keep on living through this very terrifying experience with this jinx. So that's what I'm getting from the description of the book. It just sounded interesting. I don't have a lot of horror books coming out. I mean, I had the Grady Hendrix book coming out, but there aren't a lot of horror books on the list, so I wanted to put this on there because it seemed like something that I hadn't read before. It seemed to have some underlying messages, some deeper messages regarding grief. So I just wanted to throw this one on the list and give it a try. I don't know if I'm going to like it. It might be a book I end up DNFing, but for right now, I am interested in seeing what this book's about.
And I'm still in January 28th. This one comes out, Head Cases. I did put it on my December TBR. I'm hoping to read it this month. It's about a group of FBI agents, and they're brilliant. They make up this division of the FBI called PAR, which is Patterns and Recognition. And they are really able to solve cold cases that no one has been able to solve. But there's a mastermind murderer that is taking out other murderers and leaving clues for these specific FBI agents to find. So it sounded really interesting. One of the shows that I had been obsessed with was based actually on books, and it was called Bones. And I really loved that show. I thought it was really good, and it kind of reminded me of that. So I'm looking forward to getting into this one, and hopefully it'll be just as good as it sounds.
The next book on my list coming out on February 4th is called Grave Empire by Richard Swan. And Richard Swan is a fantasy author, and he wrote Empire of the Wolf series. The first book is called Justice of Kings, and it's a very popular fantasy series. I have not read it, but this is the start of a new series for him where you're following a world that's divided in two. It seems like the world's divided in north and south. And there are some monks that send this message that they are nearing the end of the world. They're entering this phase called the Great Silence. And it talks about some prophecies. It talks about some mirror men. It talks about some other fantasy aspect that I'm very curious reading about. So this seemed very interesting, right up my alley. It kind of reminded me, after reading the description of the book, it sort of reminded me of a Game of Thrones with, like, you know, the world's kind of at war with each other and feels like the end is near. So I don't know. It just gave me Game of Thrones vibes, and I am really interested in picking this up when it comes out.
The next one is fiction, and we're finally into February 4th. It's called This Is a Love Story, and it's by Jessica Sofer. And it's a love story between Abe and Jane, and pretty much New York and Central Park. The Central Park plays a big role in this, in what I read about it on the back. It shows over a period of time how this couple has come there for all kinds of reasons. And it shows a life that they've lived over a period of years and how love can endure everything. So it's very much obviously a love story, but it's fiction. I've been really wanting to read fiction more than anything lately. So I was very much looking forward to getting this. I plan on reading it probably in January before the date that it comes out on February 4th, and I'll probably be doing an ARC review for this. The next one is February 4th, and it's A Killing Cold by Kate Alice Marshall. And she has a couple books that I have wanted to read and haven't read yet, so I've been wanting to read this author as well. What Lies in the Woods and No One Can Know, which you can see the covers right there. And I own What Lies in the Woods. I think I even own No One Can Know. But I haven't read her yet. Apparently, I'm just collecting her books until I can read her. This one sounded very interesting. I'm just going to read what was on the inside cover because I feel like it does a better job than what I can summarize. When Theodora Scott met Connor, wealthy, charming, and a member of the powerful Dalton family, she fell in love in an instant. 6 months later, he's brought her to Idlewood, his family's isolated winter retreat, to win over his skeptical relatives. Theo had tried to ignore the threatening messages on her phone, but she can't ignore the footprints in the snow outside the cabin window or the strange sense of familiarity she has about this place. Then, in an abandoned cabin, Theo finds something impossible, a photo of herself as a child, a photo taken at Idlewood. Theo has almost no memory of her earliest years, but now she's starting to piece the fragments together. Someone here has a shocking secret that they will do anything to keep hidden, and Theo is in terrible danger. Because the Daltons do not lose, and discovering what happened at Idlewood may cost Theo everything. So definitely sounded really interesting. I feel this one is going to probably make either December. I'm going to not be able to keep my hands off of this one, or in January, and you'll be getting an ARC review for this one, for sure.
So releasing on February 11th is Nothing Ever Happens Here by Serafina Nova Glass. And I have not read this author, but Jen read Vacancy in Room 10 and did an ARC review on that, so I can link it below. A book by this author that she really liked. And this book sounded fun to me. You're following a woman who had a near-death experience, and with the help of some friends, she moves to this kind of small Minnesota town, and she tries to get her life back together and recover from this bad experience she had, when suddenly a note shows up, and she feels like the person that potentially could have harmed her in the past in this near-death experience is tracking her and following her to this new town that she is in. And there's just this part of the description that seemed hilarious to me. I'm going to read it real quick to you. It's just one sentence. As new evidence surfaces, a group of well-meaning senior citizens accidentally makes the case go viral online. How is that not funny? It just seems, I can just see, you know, I don't know if this is a humorous book or not, probably not, but it just seems like, you know, like senior citizens, like they're standing around their little groups chatting with each other. They're trying to get in on this mystery situation and have something to do, and then they accidentally and then they, you know, don't know how to work the internet, and they accidentally go online and make the situation worse. That just seemed kind of humorous, like to throw a little humorous spin into this twisty psychological thriller. So I'm really interested in reading this. One, because I haven't read the author and Jen enjoyed her last book, and two, the premise just kind of grabbed me.
All right, the next one I have a digital e-arc for, and it's by an author I've read 2 other books for. It comes out February 11th, and it's called Nothing Ever Happens Here by Serafina Nova Glass. I read On a Quiet Street and A Vacancy in Room 10. I did an ARC review for Vacancy in Room 10. If Amanda has room to tag another video, if she could probably tag that one below. Or just check our videos, because if she can't tag that one. This one is about Shelby Dawson surviving a harrowing attack that should have left her dead. She tries to move past it, and 15 months later, she finally feels safe again until a note shows up on her windshield with threats her attacker made and makes her think it's the attacker all over again. I already know I like reading this author, so I definitely want to read this one. And it starts, this is where you can see my anxiety starts to happen, is there's so many that I want to read that it's hard to choose sometimes what to read next. But this one I feel I'll definitely make time for in the next couple months. The next one I do have a digital e-arc for. It's called Idle Grounds by Crystal Bamford. It comes out February 11th. And it's about a group of cousins in the late 1980s, and they wander deep into the woods on their family's property. The further they go, the stranger the surroundings become. And that's all I read about that one, and it sounded just interesting. It's considered just fiction. Again, really wanting to read fiction. So I would even say that sounds like a literary thriller, in my opinion. So really hoping to get a chance to read that one. The next one is February 11th, and I would say this is one of the ones that I thought might fall to the end of the list of potentially I may not get a chance to read this one. The Spirit Collection of Thorne Hall by J. Ann Thomas. And I remember really loving the cover for that, which I can have on the screen. I don't have any kind of arc for this one. And this one's a young woman is forced to live with ghosts in a mansion frozen in time, and she must decide between forbidden love and the price of freedom. And it said it was Jane Eyre meets The Haunting of Bly Manor. It sounded interesting. I still put it on my list, but I know there's a chance it might end up being one of the ones that gets knocked off. The next one is a physical arc. It's We Would Never by Tova Mervis. It comes out February 11th. And it's about Haley, and she's in a bitter separation and custody battle with her soon-to-be ex-husband. And his name is Jonah. He's murdered, and Haley becomes prime suspect. Haley's close-knit family supports her and is her strength, but did one of them murder Jonah? She starts to suspect, because her family is so supportive of her, that one of them may be behind his murder. And that sounded really interesting. And of course, having the physical arc makes it all the more likely I'm going to be reading this one. So hopefully I'll get to it.
On February 18th, Rebel Witch by Kristen Ciccarelli is coming out. This is the final book of the Crimson Moth duology. I read the first book this year and I enjoyed it. It wasn't like groundbreaking, most fantastic book ever, but I really did enjoy the book. You're following a witch and a witch hunter that cross paths, and I just find the magic interesting and this world interesting. The writing is good. It's a fun book to read. So I am anticipating the second book in this duology coming out and getting the ending to this story.
I have still 6 more to go, but the last 6 are all on February 25th, which is kind of crazy. That must be another big day for publishing. The first one is actually the one I have here, and it's Famous Last Words by Gillian McAllister. I have yet to read Gillian McAllister, and it's another author I've been wanting to read. And it's an addictive thriller about a new mother whose world is turned upside down when her husband commits a terrifying crime. Does she know her husband? And if her world is built on a lie, what danger is she in? I've been wanting to read her, so since I have this physical arc, I have a feeling this will be my introduction to Gillian McAllister. So stay tuned. You might be getting an arc review for this one. Next one is another one that I felt was on the lower end of this list, and it may end up getting pushed off. And again, I don't have any physical or electronic arc. It's called Crush by Ada Calhoun. Again, February 25th. A novel of marriage and what happens when a husband and wife decide to push beyond the boundaries of what the labels of husband and life limit them. What happens when danger and liberation wreak havoc in the clear sense of self one finds when the storm passes. So it just sounds like a picture of a marriage and everything that they go through. More along the fiction side, but also sounds like a little bit of suspense in there. But I don't know, it might end up being one of the ones that gets pushed aside. The next one is by an author that I read a book of hers and I absolutely loved, one of my favorite books ever. I do have this on, I believe it's on my December TBR. It might have been on my November TBR and I just haven't gotten to it because I really want to read it. And the author's name is Karen Thompson Walker. The book that I loved was called Age of Miracles, and I just absolutely adore that book so much. This one is called Strange Case of Jane O. It comes out again February 25th. I have the electronic arc for this, and it's a young woman and mother who is struck by a mysterious psychological affliction that illuminates the eerie dimensions of the human mind, a literary puzzle. Jane suffers from hallucinations, amnesia, and premonitions, and her psychiatrists struggle to diagnose. She goes missing and then found in a dissociative fugue state with no memory of what happened. So it just sounds, it's definitely fiction, and it just sounds very much like a puzzle of what's going on with her mind. But I love the way she writes, absolutely adore the book, The Age of Miracles, so I'm definitely going to be reading this one. I don't know when, it might be this month, maybe next month, but I'm going to be reading this one. The next one is a thriller, kind of, and it's called Something in the Walls by Daisy Pierce. It comes out again on February 25th. I have the electronic e-arc, and it's a newly minted psychologist, Mina, meets a journalist at a grief group she attends after her brother had died. He asks her for help with a young girl who says a witch is haunting her in a remote village. It sounded really interesting. For some reason, the cover of this, which I have on the screen, I don't know, something about this cover drew me in too, and I don't know why, because I don't know how much I think that premise is something I definitely want to read, but something about this I feel like I've been drawn to since I've gotten the electronic arc, so I have a feeling I'll end up reading this one. I don't know, if I read as fast as I did this past year, it'll be helpful, but I mean, this is a lot to be reading in just 2 months' time, 3 months' time, and we haven't even gotten to March, April, June. There are so many books coming out next year that I have my eye on that it's just crazy because there are books that are already printed that I want to read. And so it goes. Death by TBR. The next one, again, on February 25th, When We Grow Up by Angelica Baker. 6 longtime friends get together for a vacation in Hawaii. Resentments and tension that have simmered begin to boil after terrifying news breaks and it becomes harder to ignore how the world has changed and how it affects their relationships with each other. This one's fiction and just sounded interesting. I always end up somehow being drawn to these books that have like groups of friends that meet when they're older and either being haunted by something that happened in the past or they had murdered someone and now they're trying to cover things when they're older. There always seems to be like this premise of friends getting together that I end up having on my list. But again, this might be one towards the bottom of the list. It is still interesting to me. The last one to go over, I have actually already read. Me and Amanda have both already read in a Lisa Unger vlog. She has a new one coming out on February 25th. Called Close Your Eyes and Count to 10. And it's a reality game on a remote island that has many twists and turns. But if you want to know more, you can always click on the video that we did with Lisa Unger. Lisa Unger is one of my favorites, but nothing has surpassed the one that I absolutely love by her, which is Confessions on the 745. I love that book by her, but I, of course, will read anything new that she releases. Thanks so much for getting to the end of this video. If you have made it through all of our books, if Amanda has as many as I do, then it's going to be close to 50 books that you've heard about. Hopefully something has gotten your attention and you want to read it as well. Is there something we left off that is on your radar that we need to know about? There were definitely more books, but I did stop myself from continuing to search because I had so many already and I did not want to be here for hours trying to describe all these books. It gets overwhelming to have so many books on a TBR. So next month we'll be picking from our TBR jar something that we have gone over already from our most anticipated videos. And we will see you back here for more most anticipated when we do March and April. Thanks for watching, guys. Until next time.